she went to Utopia instead.
Welcome everybody, Austin Startup Week Food Track. This is our third event. We have many more events to come. We put some cards outside which detail the upcoming events. There's another one right after this event with Linda Barrios facilitating, who I think is also in Martha Pinkoff and other people in the room, which are incredible. So stay for that and go to the other events. I wanted to do a quick shout out for Food and City. That's where I'm from. Food and City is a nonprofit. We focus on the global food supply chain. And what we're doing right now is our Food and City Challenge Prize, which is an international competition for innovators in the food supply chain space. We're looking at packaging, trucking, distribution, sensors, blockchain, anything that affects that space. We're looking for entrepreneurs and startups in that space. They apply. Our deadline is October 15th for applications. In November, we announce the finalists, we pair them with mentors, and then in February they come to Austin and compete for $50,000 for their business. So if you know anybody who's innovating in that space, we have flyers, they're right outside, or you can go to foodandcity.org/prize. Come join us, tell your friends, spread the word. Thank you, and without further ado, Ms. Addie Broyles, who is incredible and will introduce herself and others. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen. Jen did such an awesome job corralling all these cats to put together this food track. So way to go, Jen. I know a lot of people in this room are super stoked to have a food-focused part of Awesome Startup Week, because it's pretty different, if you think about it, than some of the other startups that you might see. And also, just this is so different than South by Southwest, so really special space. Glad you guys are here. I'm the food writer for the Austin American Statesman. I love social media. I have 2 kids. I blog about women in food on thefeministkitchen.com. And I quilt on the side, so I have a bunch of fun things that I do. I'm going to let my lovely panelists introduce themselves, because they all have very varied and interesting backgrounds. They won't go too into detail, but it'll give you kind of the greatest hits of the things they've done. And I want to start with April, because she was one of the first social media people I met in Austin, way back in the day. We were with a sweet tea company that sweet tea.
How we ended up where we are today, people. I'm April Riggs. I'm actually the media coordinator for High Brew Coffee, and the reason I met Addie and actually Kristen as well is I was Sweet Leaf April, so I did everything for Sweet Leaf Tea prior to the Nestle acquisition. Since then, I actually did social media for Deep Eddy, Rhythm Superfoods, Bonitos. I also worked for AnsiView and PricewaterhouseCoopers doing social listening and analytics, like the world's biggest company. So now I'm back doing what I love and community wrangling and everything in between for cold brew coffee here in town.
Hi, I'm Kristen Shepard. I work for a company that I own doing content, Giant Squid Media. I'm also a blogger. My blogger is Mad Betty. I blog about food and pop culture and just kind of cool Austin stuff. I'm also the president of the Austin Food Blogger Alliance. We have a few members here. Addie was one of the founders. There's about 150 food bloggers in Austin or around Austin registered with us, blogging everything from their grandma's recipes to their own cookbook, startup type things, to restaurants, and a lot of community building there too.
Yeah, I'm Emily Keeley. I'm the founder and president of Conversation Piece Marketing and PR. We focus on lifestyle brands and obviously marketing and PR. In my previous life, I was at the larger global agencies and focused only on food. So increasing the consumption of mangoes across the U.S. to doing FDA food safety and taking a bunch of FDA people down to Mexico. So I've kind of run the gamut of doing food marketing and PR. And I actually used to own my own pie business for 3 years, so I've been on the other side of the food business as well. And I have 2 little girls, a cat, and an awesome husband.
All right, so we're going to be talking a lot about new media marketing for probably most of the hour and a half that we get. And we will leave lots of time for questions at the end. So don't hold back when it's time, but we'll do that probably at 1. So what I want to start with is, let's talk about old school. I mean, I work at what would be considered an old school traditional media outlet, but I have had to incorporate a bunch of new media techniques into how I market my own content and how I work with publicists and all kinds of companies. What old school techniques still work? What are your go-to, picking up the phone? I mean, I'll get a phone call from Emily sometimes.
Yeah.
which I love getting phone calls. Sometimes I feel like people hide behind emails or tweets too often. So talk about some of the old school things that you guys are still utilizing that you feel like really work.
I think relationships. I think just stopping by with a cup of coffee is always a great way to make that connection. If it's with a media outlet, an influencer, a blogger, whoever it is, and getting to really know that person. And I always tell my team too, just pick up the phone. That's one of the most powerful things you can do is you can't rely on email all the time. So just try to pick up the phone and make a phone call and see if that makes the connection for you for your brand.
I think a really solid platform works across all media. So if you know who you are and what your core messaging is, that extends from the personal conversations to the new media to old media. So I think that's the foundation.
For me, on old media, I would definitely reach out to anybody. I mean, I'm out and about. I ride bikes everywhere. I do as much as I can in our city. So I rely really heavily on just conversation. I also do the stalking side, but since you have done and start a conversation and then being authentic.
Yeah. What about writing a press release?
Thank God I have a company for that. But,
Who here likes to write press releases? Raise your hand.
I do.
Be proud.
I like to edit them.
Yeah. I mean, my inbox is full of press releases, so people are still sending press releases, and I think they're an important part of this process. But you cannot hang your hat on writing a really good press release and expecting somebody to write a story based on it.
It also depends on how great it is, who you push it to, who do they have on their list. If you're using, like for us, using a third party PR firm for our larger things and any kind of press release, then what is their bucket that they're sending that out into? So understanding what kind of relationships your PR folks have as well.
Sure.
So what are the things that would stand out to you in a PR and a press release that you would say, oh, you might react to? What are there?
From a media standpoint, well, please do not have National Fill in the Blank Day as your press release. I mean, I know that's impossible, and that the people who are your bosses really want you to promote National Brownie Day because you're a brownie company. Like, of course you're going to pitch that out, but I almost automatically delete emails that have that in there just because I think it's a trope that my readers are not interested in. Mm-hmm. I don't know though; they are clicking on those darn blog posts, so that I can get into a little bit of sort of like what's going on the media side of things. How many other media are in here? Am I the only writer, reporter? All right, so you guys might have a lot of questions for me on that end. Okay, so what stands out for a press release? It has to be well written and engaging, obviously, but I think the main thing is that you are wanting to, I appreciate the effort that goes into press release writing, where you are actually writing a story. You're writing the story that you wish I would write for you. I'm not gonna take quotes from your press release. I'm not gonna, what I will do is I'll take facts. I'll take the year that your company was founded. Save me the hassle of having to go to your about page on your website to find out the names and titles of the people who are involved, the year that it was started, where they've moved around, what the products are, how much the product costs. If I have to email you to ask how much your product costs, you're missing a few of the real basics that reporters and media need. So make sure that's what you get to do in the press release. And then, so pack all that information in there, where it's available, how much it costs, the URL, the social media handles. You get to cram a ton of stuff in there. Use it, upload it as an attachment. I think some media might not like attachments, but I don't mind attachments. And then in the body of the email, that's where you take the time to do the soft pitch, which is what we're talking about, the relationship building, where April can say to me, hey, it was really great to see you at Barton Springs the other day. Here's that thing I mentioned in passing. All the details you would need are in the press release. Holler if you need a contact, or if you need to want to interview somebody or what have you. But there's nothing I hate more than I'll get a mass email that doesn't even have my name. It'll have fill in the blank name because the system that you have to send out all the emails is broken. And, so those I have tiny little complaints that I could make about pitches in that way. But I think in general, a good solid press release feels like a story. It's got some of that heart in it, and it makes me care. Especially if you're a consumer packaged good, or if you're a new app or something like that, the space is tough. The space is tight. It's going to be hard for you to get coverage, and so that's where you really can sell yourself and try to stand out.
And I think too, just riffing off that is thinking about who you're pitching to. We tend to custom pitch everybody. We never blind VCC anybody. We do custom pitches for each person, and if that only means reaching out to 10 media that we feel is a good fit and that we can really direct, that they'll be interested in, we do the research and say, hey, they actually did cover this a few weeks ago or a few months ago, so there could be interest there. That really is valuable. We call it spraying and praying. We don't believe in doing that. It has to, is the outlet that you're talking to going to be a part of your target demographic? Is that who you want, is that who you want reading the article? Because they're the people that are going to gravitate towards your brand. So I think taking it back a step, and then, when I first started, we wrote a press release every day. And now I might write a press release, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a year.
For a particular client.
But it has to be something that's authentic and newsworthy, that is really, really newsworthy. Otherwise, you're kind of spinning your wheels, and it's a time suck. And we could be doing so many other things that would be more worthwhile for the brand.
And not every piece of news requires a press release.
Yes.
I mean, I would limit that to whatever the big news is that you would, I guess like at your Christmas card at the end of the year, maybe that kind of stuff. But even in those proverbial Christmas cards, which I still get 1 or 2 of, there are all the little details and stuff, but that's the kind of stuff that you're sharing on social. I love to stay up on news from companies based on their social media. So if you can really create an engaging profile, social media, especially like on Instagram or Twitter, I want to follow you there, and then that's where I want to get fed the day-to-day excitement, or the week-to-week. But if I get a press release from you every month, I'm just gonna start toning you out. So, all right, old school. What about sponsorships of events and things? That in my mind actually seems like something that has been around for a long time, where you're gonna host a taco event at the Statesman, and you're trying to decide whether or not to invest as a sponsor in that event. Sounds like that is still an effective way to reach your demographic. Talk to me about how you make decisions about which events to sponsor, where to show up with product, where not to show up with product, where to invest your resources in that way.
So for us, that's the crux of part of our business, and probably the crux of most people who are startup CPGs in this town. When Sweetly first launched, or at least when I joined in 2008, so not when they first launched, but Do 512 had just launched. That was really easy. We did a lot of parties with them. It was free. Fast forward, now we're high brew. Nothing is free anymore.
You mean you don't just get free product?
Correct. Well, not even on the other side. It's like to be a part of something, they want you to pay. So it's not like you can just go in and be like, I'm going to donate 27,000 cases to your thing. They're like, okay, and money?
In a check.
Wow.
Right, and you're trying to explain, well, my cases are worth this amount of money. So you have to figure out, one, are they going to charge? Is it going to be something like this, where I know I can get our name out?
Yeah.
It probably will be free. It'll have great exposure. Somebody's bound to tweet or Instagram about it. Yes. Right? Or is it going to be something big, like we're at an ACL or something else? So it totally depends. I think for me, when I get a lot of that in my inbox, and thankfully we've got field marketing folks, so I can read it and be like, oh, that's super badass, and then pass it to the person it goes to. But if it's something that, like, say one of y'all I know writes me and says, I really want you to do our event, well, I'll write it to my field marketing and be like, hey, these folks are really cool, here's why. I'll do all the background because they want that from me anyway. And then I try to tie into, okay, well, if we are going to do this event at this day, especially if we have a lot of other stuff going on, what can I get out of it? So what can I get from social that I don't have to sweat, and all I have to do is pop on and retweet or share something, and it's great. And it's done, as opposed to actually like an ACL where you're working an event at the same time as sponsoring an event.
Wow.
So it's really, to go back to your initial question, it depends, but it takes a lot of research. No different than digging around on getting a pitch from somebody. Like, well, do I want to do it? Does it match? Is it, like for Sweet Leaf Tea, is it a diabetes type company, and we're peddling like a really sweet tea, where our coffee is great, but if you're having a pizza party thing and you want coffee there, like, does that really go together?
So it doesn't make sense. It's a good match. And also, what's the difference between people who are already fans of the brand wanting to show up where they are versus new consumers and breaking into new consumer awareness? It sounds like, you guys do a lot of festivals and stuff that I feel like that's already where you already have loyal fans. But I think the sense I'm getting is that that's important to you too, because that increases the brand loyalty.
You want the brand loyalty, because then when something crazy does happen, and I'm sure we could talk about all that later, like, you've got people to jump on your side. Plus you've got people who already dig your product, so at least like sales are happening in that capacity, and you don't have to sweat that.
Yeah.
But you still want to bring those new people into the fold.
Yeah.
I was actually at a festival recently in the middle of nowhere, Virginia, and the stage manager came over and was like, oh, I don't drink coffee, and I'm like, here's my secret. don't y'all tweet this. Like, I don't either. Like,
Yeah.
I drink coffee when I travel, I do drink our product.
Yeah.
And I sat and told her, like, this is why I like our double espresso, and gave her a whole thing, but totally real, and she and I were just BSing.
Yeah.
She opens one and was like, oh my God, and then came back and got it all for her stage, and then we hooked them up for the rest of the weekend.
That's awesome.
But I mean, it's just a matter of like, are you at the right place? And if you're not at the right place, how do you make it? We get invited to a lot of nighttime parties where it's probably not the best thing for us, and but we're a great mixer. But if you're trying to get people to know that you exist, you're not necessarily trying to say, well, go put Jim Beam in this right away. Although it's great. Pour a little out, pour a little brown booze in, swirl it around. Anyway.
I tweet that.
Yes, it's an easy recipe, it works. Nobody knows what's really in your can.
Oh, nice.
It's great.
Nice. So Kristen, you have worked with we've hosted blogging conferences, you have attended blogging conferences, you are well aware of this crazy booming world of sponsored posts, sponsored conferences. Can you talk about it from an event organizer perspective, and even as a personal blogger, how you think about sponsorships?
Sure. So I've been the recipient of 1 million free things that people are trying to promote, and I have to say, it works. Sampling works. I order my granola from a place in Maryland because I tried it at a conference and it was so good. That
Michelle's?
Yes.
I went to high school with her.
Oh, well, that's crazy. Well, it's the best granola in the world.
It is
so
the best granola in the world.
Plug for a non-sponsor.
So get your product to, send your product to the bloggers in the media that you want to actually try it, but then also sponsor those events where those influencers are going to be nibbling and, even while they're networking.
Right,
That's what it sounds like
especially
when you tried it.
if it's an edible product. I mean, sampling
Yeah.
works. You look at what Costco is still doing in all these grocery stores. You walk through the aisle and you try a pretzel and it's really good. If you're making a remarkable product, which you all are, you want to get it into the hands of people. I don't love brochures and things about products. I definitely don't need to see a 3-page piece on yogurt. Get it into people's mouths. Let them taste it, let them feel it, let them hold it. I think it works.
What else are you finding companies are coming to you and asking for when they're looking at, maybe sponsoring an event? I mean, do they want access to email addresses? Do they want, what are some, these guys are looking at maybe sponsoring events. What should be on their roster of things they're asking for?
Sometimes they want to get up and speak and talk not just about the product, but about the area surrounding the product. So if it's a healthy product, maybe they want to get up and talk about nutrition or something. If it's the right forum, then that's added value because now you have a speaker, a product, and maybe even a little bit of cash. That is a thing that you mentioned, that people not only want you to donate product, but also cash. When we hosted a conference, we needed that cash to pull it off. We're a nonprofit, and we needed just a little bit of extra money to get that event space and all the things. So the sponsors really, really came through for us and enabled us to have the conference. So we were happy to hear them speak.
And I think that's where the editorial opportunities come in, and this is maybe a good transition into getting you guys to think like journalists, where, I spend a good deal of time every year thinking about, well, which South by panels do I want to pitch, and if I, if I want to go to conferences, what knowledge have I acquired in the past year that I feel like I can share with other people? And so I think that you guys could do that, just like we were saying with the conference, to come up with some sort of panel that you might want to do, and then you could have a representative from your company up on the panel and get some face time. But that's also the kind of content that you could write for your website or that you're putting online. So this is, in my mind, like we're already in the next wave of this part of marketing. Where editorial is really driving it. What are some creative examples that you've seen? What are some tips that you guys might have for people to, think like, I don't know, I could tell you what I how to think like a reporter, but when you guys are thinking about content that feels more editorial for your, that you're going to push out on your own platforms, how do you come up with that?
Well, we first like to get our brands to embrace a brand personality. That's the first thing, is figure out who you are and be authentic about it. So, like you think of the most iconic brands out there, Harley Davidson is the outlaw brand. IKEA is the everyman brand. Dove Chocolates is the lover. So when you think about those brands, you think about the color hues they use, the font that they use. And so we ask brands to really think about who they are as a person, as a personality. And that personality then creates your key messaging. And I think you mentioned this earlier, we don't do anything without solid key messaging. And that key messaging has to tell your story, it has to be authentic. And it also, when we're writing these, we do think about the editorial angle and how this is going to resonate with a bunch of audiences. And so that way we've got a really solid platform of a personality and a message that goes out and we feel really secure about, and then everyone is saying the same thing. So across your website, across your collateral, across your social media, you've got a solid platform to work from that I think, and then that's how we also craft our messages for media as well.
And that's where the story comes from, is from that voice.
It's from that voice,
Yeah.
because it is your voice and it is your brand, and you're not going to please everyone, but you are going to attract the people that will gravitate towards your brand, and that's our goal, is to get the people to really be attracted to your brand that you want to sell to and work with.
You use the term platform a few times, just to be clear about what that means. That means that's a set of, it's identity, it's branding, it's all that stuff.
Mission, vision,
Okay,
values, all of it.
All of it.
Logo.
Thanks.
Yeah, so thinking about your brand promise, your vision for the company, and then that mission feeds into the vision, and then you've got your position, and then you've got your core values. And we started our whole company based off a set of core values, and we hire and fire clients by it, we hire and fire people by it. Everything is based off core values, and then we go out from there. So.
How long does it take to develop that, and how often do you or your clients revisit that?
So it can take, it's easy when the client gets really excited about it, right? Because brand personality is sexy time, right? That's fun. Everyone's like, I want to be the outlaw, or I want to be this. But it can take up to 2 months. The quickest I've done is probably like 2 or 3 weeks, because the client really understood the power that this wields when you can really sit down and harness your messaging. But it can take a little while to get people on board, because some people are like, it's stupid. And I'm like, it's
And then
not.
do you check in like once a year?
We typically check in. I like to do every quarter or so, and just be like, what's not working?
What's not working? Yeah.
And then, because it will organically change, it'll change as your brand grows and changes with you. You should revisit it and make sure that you're doing your due diligence and just figuring out what's not resonating and what is.
That's interesting. I'm hearing that on messaging and thinking like, I think as individuals we could probably all stand to incorporate more of that into our lives.
And core values.
Your core values are going to stay the same. They might grow, change, tweak, and to be checking in on that on a regular basis, I think is healthy.
Yeah.
What were you guys saying?
From a CPG, from the brand standpoint, it's interesting to start from the opposite way. And that is, you start a company, you have maybe 3 or 4 people in there. One of them's the social media person, and then they get to go forage and you trust them enough to go make your personality. And then as you grow, you get your core values, and you come up with your mission statement, and you really have fine-tuned messaging. And then all of it works together to push it out from not just this one angle where you were, because that's all you had when you started, but now you've got everybody on your marketing team working together to push that out. Because we actually started completely backwards.
Huh.
It was like, okay, well, April can do this,
Yeah.
and you just go do what you do,
Yeah.
and then let us know how it all works
Sure.
on you trying to build a brand. And for us, we didn't even have a product out when I first started yammering about hybrid as hybrid.
That's so funny.
So
Okay.
trying to talk about a product that doesn't exist is like, oh, it's great, I promise.
I'm gonna totally shine the spotlight on April for a little bit,
Great.
while we can talk about
Yeah.
personality and voice and public facing in a brand, specifically with CPG. And this is something that April has done from day one, is that she has a big, loud personality, and she lets it be known. And the companies that she's worked for have let her do that. And I have always been impressed, at first amazed, and then impressed. And then I'm like, no, really, you should hire April, because she's gonna tell like it is, but it's such a unique perspective. So how did you first, one, have the balls to do that? And then 2, as we get now, I mean, it's like if you watch the Highbrew account, she's tweeting about bands she likes, art, movies, film, things that really have nothing to do with coffee, but that are a reflection of who she is as an individual.
I am trying to back off of that, though.
Are you? Okay. As you get bigger. Yeah, how do you find
Well,
that balance? How do you, they put a lot of trust in you that you weren't gonna screw it up.
It's still a question. No,
Your biggest strength is also your greatest weakness, so
yeah. Oof.
Yeah.
I never get talking about it on one-on-ones ever.
Oh.
Okay, always. On Sweet Leaf, it was a matter of nobody else was doing it. It was 2008.
Yeah.
I mean, I sat down for that interview, and it was like the person who was supposed to be my boss, who turned out to not be my boss, which is a beautiful thing, was like, oh, what do you know about this? And I'd been at Whole Foods, and a whole lot of us got laid off the summer of '08. So we had just started doing a little bit, and my department was going to be answering these social media questions. So I had a clue, and I was also the customer service person. So I look at it from a customer service angle, which is kind of how I deal with everything. And it's funny because I could be really, in my real life, like gruff or whatever, but online, or if you saw my emails to you, you'd be like, oh, this is a perfectly lovely individual. You'd never know that I'd be like, oh, like naturally. And so it was a matter of sitting down in front of the computer and figuring out, okay, well, what does this mean for social media back in 08? And then just jumping into conversations. And then just seeing whether, and nobody else was doing it, so there was no benchmarking, there was nothing to compare to anyways. And then by now, it's kind of like, well, here's this brand where we sponsor ACL, we sponsor Lollapalooza, we do all these other really fun things, so I can show these cool things of myself that just incorporate into the brand. And now that I have to kind of pull back a little bit, and this isn't like anybody telling me to, it's just the right thing to do now that we're really growing, there's still already this personality out there where when we say stuff or people retweet it or like, oh, she's got really great taste in music, like ask, Highbrew what they think of blah, blah, blah. It's a really easy conversation. On the other side, I mean, and I'll broach this, we have a pretty controversial billboard right now.
Oh my God.
And
Love that.
safer than Adderall.
Yeah.
So it's on campus for a reason, and I'm standing in line to get in the very front of Radiohead because I was lucky enough to have a Samsung wristband, and I'm getting hammered on Twitter. It's 8:30 at night. I should be in my own like whoop whoop Radiohead party time, and instead I'm like, oh shit, I've got to go to crisis management, and I haven't had to deal with real crisis management. I mean, we had some issues with the moldy cans when we first launched the cans in sweet leaf tea way back. So that was a little bit, and I did a lot of crisis management at Whole Foods. This was totally different, and it's local, and it's in our backyard, and it's something that I really care about, but I also really care about not offending people. And then how the 2% or whatever took the messaging. And then how do I bring it back from that? I screenshot some stuff, sent it to my boss. He's like, oh, it's great, disruptive, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, it's disruptive because you don't have to deal with it. It's me. Like, I'm your front line. And then I sent her back my responses. Actually, somebody there at the Statesman actually wrote us too, and he was actually super cool about it. And then we had this really great conversation, totally openly about it. And I think it worked really well, but that's a really, that's hard because you're still, I'm me, right? At the same time, I am very empathetic. I really understand people, and I think that a lot of my job is sociology. It's all trying to figure out. I mean, even when I was at Whole Foods and cashiering, do you want to talk to me when I'm scanning your product? Do you want to do all these things? You're trying to figure that out, snap judgment, and it's the same thing with no actual touch with the person.
It's so fascinating. I mean, this human element to social media is always so fascinating. I think brands that try to be so corporate and to try to be all, buttoned up and, they're in a meeting all day long. I don't really like engaging with brands like that. I don't feel compelled to. I just ignore brands. I don't really follow brands like that on social media. And I think that it's interesting that when it comes to crisis mode too, you were also acting as a human when you responded to them and said, I'm sorry to hear about this, I'm sorry to hear about that, or, not just getting defensive or not ignoring the fact that it was happening, which I think is our knee-jerk reaction when shit goes down. It's just crawl under your desk and pretend.
I definitely wanted to in the line to get up front for Radiohead at that very moment.
Yeah.
But you can't, and I don't want to leave people hanging, especially with it being something that's in our backyard.
Yeah, that's interesting. Go ahead.
Sorry.
That's all right. You asked me a question, so I'll let you.
So as we're going to move this to a different direction, I am interested in metrics. So you guys talk a lot about Twitter and Instagram and social media and all that kind of stuff. How do you, and then how do you provide some level of measurement or metrics to show, hey, this is really adding value?
It depends. So from the beginning, the question was, and we'll go back to 08 or 09, ROI.
Exactly.
And you're like, hell if I know. People come up and talk to me, they're total strangers and know who I am and know I'm behind sweet leaf tea, so it must be working, right? But are they bringing, is it going to go to the rings at the store? Now you've got a million platforms. And with my background going to PwC and AnsiView, I use Radiant 6 and I did social listening for the biggest companies on the planet. So I'd have a Skype report every 2 weeks that I had to read 1.2 million pieces of data to find their story and to drill down into that story. And that story was all about reading people. It wasn't blah, blah, blah. It was literally what are those emotions behind those tweets? And it's kind of the difference between fuck yeah, whether you're really happy or whether you're really upset about something, and how do you read that? Because a computer can't read any of that, right? But then you're really trying to find whatever works best for you and your pocketbook. Like, what company do you work for? How big are your clients? What can they actually afford? When I went freelance after Radiant 6, I called Radiant 6 like, hey bro, can you give me a bro discount? Because I'm gonna be on my own. They're like, no. It's gonna be like $80 billion. And I'm like, oh, how do I charge my clients that? So it really just depends. And you can go super basic. You can use one-offs that are free and go get your like, sign up with them and get your free report. I've done that to dig deep.
What are some of those examples?
One of my cheaper favorites is Sprout Social. And you can go get pretty great stuff from them
Sprout
and
Social.
Union Metrics online for free. Just sign up to get their newsletter or whatever, and you can get some pretty detailed stuff. Union Metrics also gives you really detailed Instagram, which is great, but now Instagram's lightening up on their API, so we're able to get that. I could actually get stuff right from Instagram. I was doing my monthly report last night till 4:30 in the morning, still not done, was due today. Put that out there. And I'm going through Instagram of all of our pictures and like counting the impressions on my calculator, because
Okay,
there's still nothing on Instagram to like wrap it up in a nice package yet,
Right.
but we're getting there.
But it is as simple as impressions and people that are, and so it's just how do people are, who you're
Follows,
reaching.
likes, engagement.
And then
I mean,
actual
if
engagement.
you're just starting,
Yeah.
you know, with a new company, a new brand, and new accounts, just track that. Are you growing each month? I mean, I would say the importance factor is the engagement. It's more trending towards that because people can,
As opposed to the follow?
yeah, because
Yeah.
you can buy, follow it, you know, there's all
Right.
this
It's all
illegitimate
money
stuff
now.
out there. So the engagement is what you want to see grow and see be real.
And
be
so,
real.
just in case, I want you to talk specifically, what does engagement look like? I mean, I think a lot of us know that because we engage, but I think sometimes it's easy as a person to engage, but as a brand, you might not realize that, well, I mean, a retweet obviously, an app reply, a comment, those are like the gold, those are the gold pieces of engagement for me. Or is that the same way from where you guys said?
Yeah, conversation. Like if I could actually like, whatever your handle is, you and I are, bless you, going back and forth, like, to me, that's engagement. Like not just, I had a friend a million years ago who said if advertiser just said buy my shit, I'd buy it, because then that's honest. Well, when you're out there and you only get one-way messaging from a CPG or some kind of brand, you're like, ugh, I don't want to always be sold to. I actually scheduled a bunch of stuff to get me through ACL and National Coffee Day because we're doing something in all of our regions. So I get to act like I'm in like 8 or 9 places, but I'm one person. And when I was reading them, I had to space them out a certain way because all I could think was like, oh, these are gonna come at people on Twitter. And I don't want to do that. I want people to be like, yes, I can go to Timbuktu store and wherever Hayes, San Francisco, and maybe win a year's supply of coffee in this badass bag. Awesome.
Yeah.
I want that message, not to recoil people.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's a
right.
delicate thing.
It can't all be advertising, so there should be an 80-20 rule, 20% self-promotion, 80% other stuff.
Other stuff.
Nice to know, shares, which I think is why your accounts are so fun to follow, because we're not just being sold to.
Will
There's
you
all
break,
this
will
other
you,
fun stuff.
80-20, say that one more time, 80-20, what's that rule for you?
20% can be self-promo, 80% has to be other stuff.
And you had said, nice to know, you mentioned a couple things off the
Oh,
top.
whether,
Those were
you know,
some
nice
great
to know
ideas.
information, shared articles, relationship building, maybe that's, you know, reaching out to other brands, potential clients, whatever you wanna do with that 80, as long as it fits into that brand.
Non-profit sharing, I think, is great.
Right, news
Show
stories.
something that like gives your brand or your client empathy, and I don't know, I mean, that's a whole thing of like brands aren't people too, but they are actually run by people. It's like, we're not all robots.
Let's see, Instagram, keeping track, how do you get people to actually become brand ambassadors for you? Is that that's the next logical step after engagement? You engage with them enough, suddenly they're Instagramming your product? Like is that kind of like, you know, first base, second base, third base of the relationship?
That's the dream.
Yeah, you hope, but then
Yeah.
some might start asking you for money. That's the one thing we get, you know, it's
Yeah.
like, how much are you gonna pay me?
Sure.
And then you have to really, you know, work with the client and make the recommendation on, is this influencer, because if you have someone, you know, doing it for free, and that's the you know, the unicorn there, but a lot of it is, you know, how much money can you pay me? And so then we have to go back and look at the, you know, how many influencers they have, do they have paid followers, because you can always tell what they do. Is it organic followers, and how much do they engage with this influencer?
How do you tell if they have paid followers? Tell us.
Well, so they'll have a lot of followers, but not a lot of engagement. A lot, or there are not a lot of likes. Like there's one that we were looking at, like we had 100 likes on something, and this one who had, I think it was like 200,000 followers had 50 likes. So you can tell that way as well if it looks like they're being paid followers. So we have to vet those for our clients and make the recommendations, and what does the budget look like on this stuff, because a lot of people do come back and ask for cash because it's all cash.
And so then the question is, do you pay for a sponsored post maybe on Instagram, or do you spend those resources developing your relationship with your everyday fans who are not bloggers, who are not considered influencers, but maybe they're micro influencers in their own small world.
And so our recommendation, we don't like to do a lot of paid stuff just because we feel that it's authentic for the brand, unless it's something really, really great and it's directly aligned with the brand and we know it's going to be a big turnout for our clients. But I would rather spend the money doing the relationship and having the conversation and really having authentic time with the consumer that loves your brand instead of doing a lot of paid stuff. I just personally just feel that there's a good rule, there's a good mix there, but we like focusing on the honest.
What are your thoughts with Kristen and April about paid relationships with bloggers and Instagrammers specifically? It sounds like.
I think it's the nature of where we are, and I think it's a necessary evil. Personally, I am more influenced by real people talking about the stuff that they're making rather than seeing something sponsored because I know it's just advertising. If my friend goes out and eats a taco and they really like it, I'm probably going to want that taco versus a big influencer who has a beautiful spread of tacos. That's just another ad to me.
It must work on some level, right? Otherwise people wouldn't be doing it.
Well, I think there's a good blend there. I mean, I really do think that there are some great opportunities, but you don't want everything to feel like an advertisement. Right. So I think that when things come across our desk for clients and we get really excited, I think when we get excited, we're like, yes, like this makes sense. But that's 1 in 50 that come across our desk. So I think it's latching onto those and then really making that decision, and then doing the rest of the time working on those relationships and making those authentic stories and relationships.
And it depends what the end goal is. So are you looking for more followers on your account? Then maybe that's the final goal and that's the win. Are you looking for a sell-through of product? I don't know that is happening from Instagram influencers or how we can track that or see. So I think if you're going to do something like that, be careful and really determine what your goal is.
And I think this kind of goes back to the old school question I'd asked at the beginning. Make a product that looks freaking awesome. Like, make it that has cool packaging, that has fun language or stuff on the outside. I love seeing products where there's something on there that has a hashtag that says, show us how you use this product and hashtag it with this and we'll share your product. Or, say it again?
How you do your day.
How you do your day. We've got lots of packaging. There's a packaging design, or what's the name of your panel after this? It's packaging design, redesign. Tell me.
Yeah.
Rebranding and redesign.
Rebranding and redesign. So if you do feel stuck in your product because your product doesn't look so good, I mean, basically, whatever you sell, if you can't do this and make it look cool, you need to redesign how your product is sold. And I hate to say that we live in a world that's driven by Instagram and that kind of visuals, but we do. If it can't Instagram, it doesn't fly. And this goes even to when I go to are these two different products?
Well, I mean, it's just the difference between
Which one's the new one?
Instagrammable and not Instagram.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'll show you that. Okay, so which one? Imagine these filled with pickle or filled with pickled carrots. This is the old one. This is the new one. And people who are way smarter at design than I am could tell you why this one is more visually appealing than this one. But this one is. Here's what's interesting. So Hat Creek, this is a reflection of what their current branding looks like on a sign on the road. And so I can see when you first develop a product, that's what you might want to do because you want to. When somebody's in the store and they see a product, they're like, oh yeah, I've had hamburgers there. I'll try their pickles. But this is obviously a distinct pivot away from that. And I think that it shows the ambitions of the brand and where they want to take it. Hat Creek is a local restaurant. This is going to be a national product. So, wow, that's
Night and day different, dude.
night and day difference. Yeah.
Like that's a Whole Foods shelf.
That's
Like,
exactly right.
like beautiful
That's
packaging.
Well, so and I
And
think
then
about
that's
it
like just all right.
from like the recipes that I publish, recipes that I cook. So we do this year of baking series. I wish I would have maybe brought the statesman so I could show you. We do this year of baking series. It's a month. Every month we do a new video for baking projects that I'll take on. And so slowly as this year's gone on, the visuals of whatever we bake are increasingly help me decide what we're gonna bake. So this month, rather than just doing cupcakes, we decided to do candy bar cupcakes because I knew they would look super sexy with caramel and crumbled, you know, Snickers and stuff on top, and it looked awesome. And I was so happy with how that turned out. You know, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I would have really thought of it from a, well, that's impractical because if you're a home cook, you don't have time to make 3 different elements for the cupcakes.
Make real food.
Make real food. I mean, because that's I'm just trying my damnedest to make real food for my family. But you know, visuals are making the world go round right now. So, and that's not going anywhere. Same with videos. So maybe we'll transition into videos
Which
a little
is
bit.
the crux of
Are you guys
pain
making
to play.
Yeah.
what? The visuals?
Yes,
Yes.
like if you've got somebody like, I've got the eye that I have, and like it's changed, it's grown, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
But if you've got somebody who's really good at that, and like, oh, their pictures are really pretty, you're like, oh, okay, well, I could see paying for a one-off or here and there.
Yeah.
Even though like it's against everything I believe in
Yeah.
on being genuine and authentic.
I feel like everybody who has an Instagram fancies themselves a photographer in some kind of way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You got a lot of
Yeah.
filters, you
Yeah.
can.
The filter editing's so
It's
good.
easy to make something look good.
It's easy to make it look good. Instagram really has changed a lot of stuff. So the video component of it, you know, all of us are on Facebook all day long, and we're seeing some pretty cool uses of marketing videos. I mean, I'm loving what BuzzFeed does, where they're getting
These quick videos, the tasteful,
The
they're
taste-
so
yeah,
the taste,
shareable.
yeah.
And so now that we're about a year into that sort of, at least from a cooking perspective, like the overhead cooking videos, you know, we're seeing more sponsored content coming into that. But but also the taste testing stuff. I do a taste test series. We do live streaming on Facebook every day, usually Wednesday at noon on the Opposite 360 Facebook page.
It's pretty fun.
It's so fun.
It's fun.
But lots of people are doing that. And so I think that you have the opportunity to get your product. I will taste your product on my live stream if you send it to me. That's all you have to do. You don't have to pay me. You don't have to, you know, whatever, suck up in all kinds of ways.
Suck up.
Suck up.
Just go ahead and suck up.
Right, because it's honest.
It's-
So
yeah.
if you send something to her and it's bad, she's gonna
I'm
say
not gonna
it's
say
bad.
Yeah, she'll make a face.
I got this today.
Oh, this might make this taste like sour cream. But so thinking like marketers,
Watch that.
how would you guys, besides sending Food Writers product, what are some other ways that you might get creative with video in the next year? Can you imagine?
Well, I think, you know, back in my day, like a long time ago before social media, we were putting together these kind of long, laborious, you know, this is how you make a recipe, kind of robotic. And I love where it's gone and how it's changed. And I think integrating, you know, making a quick and fast recipe, if it's just a 30-second video of it's this, this, and this. Especially as a mom now, I have about 5 seconds to make dinner. And I want to make something healthy, but I think watching these videos on Facebook, and it's just real fast, there's no sound, but there's like the
Yeah.
font and the copy, and it tells me what to do. I think that's a really smart way to go about things. And I also think, you know, thinking of partnerships and what that looks like. And we partnered with one of our fries clients with an ice cream because everyone loves doing y'all do Frosties and
Yeah.
and the French fries
Yeah.
and like dip it. Oh.
So good.
And so we partnered with a local ice cream company. We brought those two together and we did this like food porn French fry extravaganza that really got people talking. And I think they were a larger brand than we were. So I think having that relationship with them and really getting it out there caused a lot of stir. And so I think thinking of those things, do you have partnership opportunities with a brand that might be more well established and is willing to work with you and I think help elevate you as well. And then thinking outside the box and thinking about, you know, that the Frosty and the French fry are from my childhood because I would just like seriously. So I think thinking of those things for your brands is a really smart move.
So, you know, videos that provide like real life tips and advice and tricks. So things that are helpful, things that are funny, and things that are moving.
And
do
short.
really well.
And short.
It all has to be short, all of it. Well, but then sometimes we'll see some long form produced stuff, but usually those are from the New York Times or produced outlets.
Right.
I think,
Yeah, they're fancy.
yeah, but then we're also seeing like Yeti coolers getting into the documentary space. How many of you have seen any of those?
You're so good.
That's
Yeah, they're really good.
brilliant. Because that is such a lifestyle product. And so all of you have, with all of your products, services, whatever it is that you're selling, I could see there being videos for each one of those, but it depends on what your brand is. You know, if you want to be that sort of funny, if you're a funny, humorous brand, or you want to have that element, tongue-in-cheek humor, go that way. If you feel like you're going to change the world through what you do, which I think all of you can make an argument that you have that impact with your companies, tell that story too.
But I think it also goes back to establishing your brand personality. When you guys are doing a video, like what is your brand personality? Like we have one that she's more of the kind of the everyman. She's from a very small town and she wants to keep it very authentic and humble and so when we do all the videos, they have to look and feel that way. So the font choices we make, I mean, how we direct the camera a certain way, versus someone who's going to be more of like the lover is going to have probably more food porn and the oil's pouring slowly and you're you're kind of salivating. So thinking about it from that perspective of your food brand, how do you want to be? And so when you create all these videos, keep that in mind. And so that way it comes through as authentic and being on your
So
own
is there
brand.
like 6 set personalities that you have in your mind? You've got lover, everyman, outlaw. What are the other ones?
There's Jester, which is Doritos.
And where does this come from? This is like Joseph Campbell shit or
This
something,
is
right?
So there's a great book called Story Wars, and I advise all of you to read it if you are looking at to see like what who you want your brand to be. Story Wars is great for I think telling your authentic story, and then it walks you through like there's one that's magician, which I know someone back there has done magician before. There's Nurturer. That's actually the brand we chose for us because that's just what we stem from, is being a nurturing brand. Dove is known as a nurture brand. If you think of everything, the pure white and very simple. And they take care of you. And so I think just looking at that and reading that book, and you can look online and you can Google brand personalities, and like 85,000 things will come up, and you can get lost in that for a while. Yeah, so
That's really neat.
it's really interesting.
Okay, so I want to talk about lemonade for a second. So because hot sauce in your bag swag, say you're a hot sauce company. She hasn't seen it yet. We're gonna change that.
Yeah.
I know. We're gonna change it.
I'm not normal. I haven't even turned on my big giant beautiful television in over a year. I'm like in the 1800s and should wear like buttoned up shoes.
With purple hair. With purple hair.
Yeah,
I
I'm
love
not.
it. So what I think is interesting. Well, there's a million things I think about that are interesting with Beyonce and lemonade specifically, but from a brand perspective, formation comes out, hot sauce in your bag swag is this line that immediately the day the video drops, people are tweeting that. Hillary Clinton, the following week, is pulling out hot sauce from her freaking bag.
Mm-hmm.
If you own a hot sauce company, what do you do? What do you do?
No brainer. You start making like cute stuff with your
You're making
in
gifts?
bag.
You're making
Gifts?
gifts?
You're sending out really cute gift
Cute
bags
gifts,
branded to people.
Yeah.
To all your
Yeah.
bloggers.
And nobody did jump on that, did they?
Nobody. Yeah.
I would have partnered with a local bag company and
Yep.
put our hot sauce in the bag and then done Instagram worthy bags of hot sauces in bags and then turn it into something where every time you retweet this or Instagram this, does it go toward
Charity.
something? So a charity or something. So you are taking advantage of it. But I saw that Red Lobster's sales increased by 30%.
I'm not at it.
I mean, and then Red Lobster. I don't know if you guys saw what they came back with.
What'd they do?
It was Cheddar Bay, B-A.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean,
That's pretty good for Red
Obviously, they
Lobster,
had to.
though.
I was just like, no. I mean, it was, but they got a lot of scrutiny about that
Yeah.
because it was like they were like Cheddar Bay, and it was like no, like all the things that you could do.
So this is a good reminder
Dead
that
Lobster worked really hard at that.
Okay, this is a good reminder that your first idea usually belongs in the trash, and the second idea is the one that you want to go with, or the
Oh, no.
ones that are later.
I'm a fan of Cheddar Bay.
I
I think it's a no-brainer. Of
Yeah.
course.
Well, you do that, and
I
then,
think
but I
it's
think
hilarious.
It's not the only thing you
Sure.
do, but
and then that, you can create a long tail on it too. It doesn't have to be just a flash in the pan.
I just think there could have been something else that they could have done with that, like do the Cheddar Bay biscuits. But
And
is
do
there like
something
a
else,
is there like a recipe that you can do, Cheddar Bay and put hot sauce on the Cheddar Bay biscuits?
Yeah.
Can you,
Or-
and can you do lemonade and partner
Or
with it?
like think about that, if Red Lobster had teamed up with a lemonade company and a hot sauce company,
And there's
they could
that
have some kind of.
there's that
cool-
nonprofit lemonade company that I forget the little girl's name. But yeah.
Sweet tea.
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness, could you have done something with that and that goes to
Absolutely.
charity and then really have that halo effect and done something really smart, but just they're like, got Cheddar Bay biscuits.
But you also have to check, do that checking in of, is this in line with what my voice is, what my brand is, what my values are? There's nothing worse than trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. So if it's not a good fit for your brand, be willing to leave that on the table.
And if you really
Which
have
can
to
be
question
hard.
it, I'd say then it's probably not a good match. Because
Yeah.
I go through that. Like, are we supposed to jump on the bandwagon? And there's a lot of
Pumpkin
stuff,
spice lattes.
right? Well, that wasn't me.
No, that wasn't
But
it.
but it's kind of cool. It's
Yeah.
pretty damn funny. But I mean, you have to either be really into it and believe in it, or you don't. Because if there's that one like, oh, it probably won't match, then it's not a match.
But if you're the kind of company who is picking up pieces of pop culture that drop all around you and then spitting that back out, incorporating that into your online chatter, you're definitely gonna wanna jump on anytime there's something that people are, the zeitgeist, whatever people are talking about. And that's what's crazy about the internet right now, is that our water cooler is huge and it involves anybody we've ever known. And ever, like, that you met once on a trip. They're at your water cooler now. And so pay attention to what your own chatter looks like, what you're seeing in your own Facebook feed, what you're seeing in your own Instagram feed. And if you're not actually using these services and you're only trying to do it for your brand, you're always gonna be about 3 years behind. Because, you know, I feel like I have to day-to-day use it as a person to understand how I can use it for my company, my brand, my own marketing. So, random little thing. Okay, so CPG is huge right now. How many of you are involved in CPG versus some sort of service, food service that you offer? Raise them up. Tell me who do we have repped here? Sway Water. Hershey, awesome.
Coconut coffee creamer.
Okay.
Hot Creek Provisions and Hot Dang.
Hot Dang. Give it up. Who else you got over here?
I'm actually with the SKU Accelerator, so we work with multiple companies every year.
Oh, awesome. Anybody else?
Kettle and Fire bone broth.
Kettle and Fire. Oh, that's right. Okay. What else? Anybody else? Okay, so we got some CPG. CPG is growing so fast right now. My perspective is that because consumers just want the appetite for new things is, I mean, this is the case in every industry, but you know, you walk into the grocery store. Grocery stores historically have loved having new products to put on their end cap. They can make a little bit of extra money by, you know, taking, you know, big food manufacturing dollars and put it right where your eyeballs are going to be. Even though grocery stores are getting smaller, we're seeing more products. How do you see that? Where's that going to go in the next 5 years? Online shopping?
Well,
Food delivery?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna delivery.
Food delivery, highly personalized.
Yeah, personalized, customized delivery and logistics.
And that people are ready to shop at more than one store. So these are the things that you have to know as you're thinking about your marketing, that, you know, long gone are the days where you just go to one store once a week and that's all the shopping you do.
Right. Well, I think people do go to multiple stores too. I mean, I know we do it with all the kids. We're trying to like haul around. So I do one-stop shopping, and I used to do like one big shop. So thinking about how people are shopping, and you know, it's interesting. Like we're trying to get our one product into retail, and it's interesting. They will start with, you know, small pilots too. So this one store, and one store, I won't say who it was turning everything into a profit center. So to get on their website was $25,000. And I was like, well, hell no, we're not gonna, you know, and then getting on their shelves was gonna be $70,000. And I was like, no. So we were focusing now on doing a pilot program, because we were gonna go huge retail. And my recommendation, and finally we went that way, was to not do that. Let's focus on an Austin pilot. Let's see what's resonating, what's not. And then let's also do online sales, because they have the ability to sell online. A lot of these companies, you know, a lot of these products don't have that ability, but if you do, I would recommend doing a pilot, seeing what happens online. If you can get into a few stores and do some things smaller, then you can see where you're testing out. But I mean, that was our guidance for this client, because that was a lot of money. I was pretty alarmed. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for getting into those stores initially? Like if you're a really small CPG company that doesn't have too much of a retail presence, what can you do to get in?
Well, so it depends if you've got built-in relationships or not. And that's easy for me to say from standing up here, because my CEO was the co-founder of Sweet Leaf, so they already had Whole Foods in their back pocket. So when they knew they wanted to launch, that's the first place they go. Now, if you go do that, and I think it used to be every Wednesday was the day that all the vendors come in to go try to hawk their wares to Whole Foods buyers. But it depends. You also have to know that are you hitting all those quality standards. So it kind of depends. And I think starting with a smaller store is a lot easier at first, depending on where you want to go and what your brand is really all about. And see if you can get one of those buyers at that store fired up about your product enough to where you can go talk to somebody on the buying side a lot higher up to get in there.
They're scouting a lot of. I mean, they're scouting farmers markets though too. I mean, it's in their advantage. It's advantageous for them to be having companies like yours on the store shelves, because they're now seeing that they're competing with the artisan corner markets and the farmers markets. And
Yeah,
stuff
there are
like that.
foragers
So,
now at all these different companies
But they're
going to
calling
look
you.
for folks like y'all.
Yeah.
I would say-
Or they'll, to make their lives easier, they'll call somebody who's already doing the work with somebody who's smaller. They don't want to invest
Joy
in
runs
that.
an incubator.
Oh, sorry, I have the Cooksville, which is currently an incubator in town, and so they'll make phone calls to what's there, what do you got, who's at this point or some point in time in the entrepreneurial process, and say, yeah, I'll take a meeting.
That's really interesting. That's a good question. I don't know if there are any other programming that kind of address that specifically, but I would say network with the other CPG people in your space. You know, don't be afraid to. Of course, you're gonna automatically think of them as your competition, but
It's a great city for that, man. Like, of all, like,
Yeah.
all BS aside, like, I take it super seriously with Chameleon being here, Kohana, Cuvée, as far as all the cold brew, and I have like a rule, if people tweet with us multiply, I write back and then hashtag local love.
Yep.
And it's completely genuine, because me having a background from Whole Foods, I know a lot of people and all these different brands, and we all follow each other.
Yeah.
And it's a really great space, and there is some competition in there, but for the most part, people are really cool. That's why if you talk to like the SKU folks, that incubator is great, man, because you've got people from all walks of life and CPG that really want to help each other out, because we're all trying to do the same thing. We all want to make a buck and see where we can go with
and
our
even
product.
if you don't get into one of the accelerators, you know, run in that crowd, meet those people, you know, realize that maybe that accelerator wasn't for you at that particular time, and then, you know, you'll find
But
the
take
community.
the person, like the
The networking,
connections.
yeah, the networking. The networking is as valuable as, you know, any one on, you know, if you were officially part of the track.
I think too, meeting with a broker, there are some brokers in town that focus on natural foods. There's a really great one that we work with a lot that, you know, he'll do a few favors and just try to have the conversation or just guide you somewhere. Those are always really good people to get to know as well and see if they can make some inroads for you, and then you take it from there.
Sure.
And we all stay in the same world, so it's like as incestuous as possible,
It is.
Love it.
but in a really positive
Yeah.
way.
Makes sense.
And there's a lot of pride to go around.
However that can be thought around, that's, you know, that's a good, yeah, there's so much interest right now.
Tweet that.
Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and we'll officially open it up to questions. What are the things you guys wanna ask?
Okay, so whether you're a tiny startup or let's say a 50-year-old grocery store, I think it's very common you might have one person who has to manage all the marketing, and maybe that store they're just kind of getting into digital and social, but they might have limited budget. Is there anything that you could say, kind of quick and dirty, these are the things that you should make sure that you're doing that aren't necessarily expensive? Like, for example, it used to be, you just want to have a Facebook page and get people to like it, but as you were all mentioning, that's not really good enough anymore. Like,
Pay to
if you
play
have
now.
minimal budget, people say maybe go to Facebook because your return will be a little bit better since it's relatively cheaper and you can get it from more people. So what do you guys have in mind in terms of, you have no marketing presence, where do you start?
Have an account and I'll like do a Twitter and a Facebook and a Instagram, and then understand that Facebook's gonna piss you off because it's now only pay to play.
Yeah.
So you might have like
Facebook's
50
become
billion
difficult.
followers or likes or whatever on there, and then like every time you post something cool and you think it's awesome, and maybe even your friends think it's awesome, and you get like
because you're not promoting it.
Yeah.
Right.
correct. And I've even talked to, I mean, because back to his point as far as like how our like little CPG like family is in this town. Like we have a group where it's all marketing, it's all like natural foods groups, and we all sit and talk and just like, what do you do? Well, I sponsor a post, and every time I put a post out, it's like $50, and I see that from Rhythm and a few other companies, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like I don't want to put $50 toward everything that I put out there. So some I don't pay and I let it go. Some I see how they do and then I sponsor it from there. So you have to like put a little bit of money aside if you're gonna bother with Facebook. And you can even just like keep doing your own thing and let it go, and then decide once you've got some money where you want to put it very strategically there. And then really utilize Instagram, because that'll really surprise you. And Twitter's just over here for really great conversations. Plenty of people, even my boss was like, Twitter's dead, I don't know why you use it. It's not true at all. It's really, really pretty cool. You just have to keep that conversation going on that side, but that's pretty easy too. Build the Instagram.
Your input will be your time. And so then you're gonna be thinking about, well, how much time, because I can spend all day on Twitter and Instagram. But at the end of the day, I'm not, it's
a
work.
work.
I'm getting work done, and I can't not do those things, but I think that's where you have to set some personal boundaries and say, I'm gonna spend 2 hours a day on this. Which, is that reasonable?
Man, it just depends. Yeah.
How big, yeah.
I mean, it
yeah.
totally depends, because you could have nothing going on, which is fine. So you come in, say a few things, maybe try to talk to a couple people on Twitter, have a few conversations going, and let it go and go back to whatever your day-to-day work has to be. Or if you're like busy at a festival for a few days and you finally get to like really dig in because your wireless, your Wi-Fi doesn't work at all, then you're like, oh my god, I've got like pages and pages of stuff to answer. that's fine too. I mean, but at least you've got that conversation
I mean,
going.
basically, don't do it once a week. If you're only checking into your platforms once a week,
No, you actually have to
That's
put
not
some time to it, but you
Yeah.
can totally go like, what I would tell somebody in the beginning is like, start in the beginning of your day, because it's really easy to sit down with your cup of coffee or however you roll into your day and ease into your day and look at social. It's great, and then it's an easy conversation, then you step back out and go about your business, and then kind of come back in maybe when you're like dragging ass at the end of your day. You're like, oh, we're not doing anything anyways, go back to social media. And that's a
It's a
really
way to
great
fill
way
the
to
gap of
start
time, yeah.
when you're first starting out and trying to figure out where is it best for me to put my time.
And if you have a small budget, get creative with it. If you have
Yeah.
$500, maybe you want to take that $500 and, you know, pay Facebook to get all your followers, or maybe you do a contest and you give away a GoPro and then you use the extra cash just to promote and try to get followers a little more organically, people that'll hopefully stay.
I'll just add, there's some technology helps to help you do that too, right? You can actually run integrated campaigns across those using tool sets.
what are some examples of those?
Buffer, Hootsuite, I have
Hootsuite.
them all connected to each other, so write once, publish everywhere.
Well, there's small
But no, no, no.
asterisk, small, okay.
Oh,
yeah.
sorry, I was gonna say, don't do what they already warned you against, which is blasting people all the time and being inauthentic. I'm just talking about ways to make it easier for yourself.
Yeah, and I think that there's definitely a time and place to send on all 3 channels though.
Yeah.
Once you get to, you'll get to a point though where you will see very clearly that each channel needs a different,
Needs a
it's not a
different-
different voice, but
Yes.
it's a different tone,
Tone,
a different
yes.
level of whispering versus yelling versus splashy
Yes.
versus nuance.
And so to your point, that $500, I just took it, split it so that I had a different brand voice in each of those places. And I actually hired somebody to do that,
Yeah.
to do that for me. And there's a different presentation in each of those platforms.
I have one suggestion and one question.
Yeah.
So for Facebook, I think something really interesting to do is if you have a little money to put towards a post and you make it really shareable, and maybe, you know, you do something where people get a benefit out of sharing it, whatever that may be, that's huge, because then you're gonna reach all their audiences, and they're, you know, 100% of their audiences are seeing their posts, while only 1 to 3% of yours are seeing yours. So that's just a little trick. And then a question for you guys is, what about Snapchat and Pinterest?
I have
I hate disappearing content, so I do content for a living. I don't like it to go away. I do think it's a necessary evil for some brands, but I'm digging in my heels with Snapchat.
And saying no?
Pinterest,
Say no.
I've never personally been a fan, but I love it, and I love the people who are into it, because like even people that I work with will go build amazing things for our activations, and I'm like, where the hell did you find that? They're like, oh, Pinterest. So I had them like go, like they'll add stuff for us, and I'll get like an email that's like, oh, blah, 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 and I'll go in every once in a while and check when I've
Do you have a Pinterest account?
Yeah,
or
we
is that
do,
not active?
but I'm not super active, and I haven't started a Snapchat for Highbrew because I have my own fears there.
Well, you can use the Instagram stories too.
That's what we have.
And you don't have to build a whole new
That's-
follower.
no,
It's a lot harder to get followers on Snapchat than it is on Instagram.
Yeah.
And then it's me trying to get out, like what we've talked about with me living in the 1800s and like my carriage and my horse that are out there. Like, I haven't gotten past like the why bother. Even my roommate, who's like technologically just not cool, was like, oh, you should get on there. It's really fun. And I'm like,
From our perspective, Snapchat
just as me personally, I'm
has
like,
really
I don't
fallen off
understand.
because, you know, we're never gonna be a featured content provider, and so our content's gonna go away in 24 hours. I need a long tail, I need a link that I can actually, you know, be able to tweet to or share months from now. And so, but I mean, from a personal brand development standpoint, it makes sense, but I think a lot of the mid-level brands are not gonna get as much out of Snapchat. However, because I'm saying that, that means that there's a paucity of mid-sized brands that are in that space killing it. And
Yeah.
so the Gary Vaynerchuk in me says, go get that money. Go get those eyeballs. Go get their time. If you aren't familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk's work, I beg of you, please go. He's Gary VEE on Twitter. He's written a bunch of really great books, and I mean, he's my own personal social media guru.
We were talking at a design panel last week, and there was this one designer that most of her sales come from Pinterest. And my jaw hit the floor. I was like,
Well, it's all
that's
food and
amazing.
design, right?
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
design.
and so she saw most of her sales come off of Pinterest, and I was a little shocked by that. So I think there's something to it. I'm also not a Pinterest person unless I find a photo, but the community there that is really, you know, raging fans there, I mean, you can do something with it if you do it right. And she was using it to her advantage.
Yeah.
So.
Instagram's a big, I mean, Pinterest is a big traffic driver, but just like Instagram and the video, you have to have something that's beautiful.
Over and over.
So if
and
you
over.
really
Right,
excel
yeah.
in the visual, then Pinterest is gonna work for you, and you gotta have a great website too.
And Pinterest can be a cool way to, like, say if you're a fashion or a home brand, or even a food brand. I mean, if people were cooking with Highbrew, for instance, and they were blogging about it, that could be almost a place to keep your bookmarks, to say,
Right.
and then to turn around and say to your bosses, look, I created this, board that has all of the posts that have ever been written about, that include Highbrew and making things at home, a home cooking thing. So I use that sometimes just like a bookmarks place, but then I don't use it for a year. And
Even if I think a brand doesn't have a Pinterest account themselves, they can think about people pinning their stuff and make sure that there's beautiful images in every blog post that they do, so that when other people are pinning, they have that image, because they're not gonna pin it if there's no beautiful image.
Right,
Sure.
so long as it drives back to your page then, because otherwise,
Then you
What's-
get lost in space.
what's the point, right?
you had a question up here.
Do you know, like in grocery stores, they have people giving out samples of their products? Does that cost money?
Yes.
And then my second question is, a lot of people have told me that I shouldn't be in Whole Foods, and maybe the next step down from Whole Foods. So what is that next step down from Whole Foods?
Royal Blue.
Oh,
The Royal Blue Grocery, or in Tom's Market.
Tom's Market.
Fresh Plus, those are, what'd you say?
People's.
Oh, People's Pharmacy, yeah.
What-
Those
what
are
is
the,
Where do you
For
get
the
the product?
niche that you're specialized.
we're throwing out all kinds of retail outlets.
Yeah, tell us what you're making.
I'm coming out with a CBD edible, actually.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I did not say that.
Cannabis.
Cannabinoid, that's
But-
what's
oh.
gonna make you better. That's
Oh, yeah.
like the non-THC
It's the
that's actually gonna,
non-psychoactive.
it won't get you high, it'll just make you feel
Organics
better.
or some, like, something
So
healthy.
probably, Weedsville, I think we heard
Yeah,
Weedsville.
Yeah,
Weedsville.
Weedsville.
Yeah,
Yeah, bigger place.
Yeah.
those are good. But yeah, say it again?
People's,
It's not gonna be a big company. It's
Yeah,
gonna be
but that's how, but you
People's
start.
is actually already prescribing, and they've got people there that are doing that, so that would be well, because you can, CBD became legal last July. FYI. Right? So, do not tweet that. So, People's Pharmacy would really be a really great way to go, because they're already embracing
In the wellness
that
space.
line.
I also want to do like festivals and stuff, kind of like Highbrew, but I don't know, with a lot of festivals in Texas, you're like, is it weed? No, but yes. So,
Yeah.
You go to some
Hybrid
cooler
would-
one like Art Outside, where it's actually run by people who do a lot of cool, quirky kind of things.
Or Utopia Fest?
Yes,
Yeah.
where you're just dealing with a lot of different people and not like a
Corporation.
C3 or a Live Nation. You're gonna have a lot better way to go. And then look at the people who do Lockin' Fest, which isn't in Texas, but they do a lot of cool stuff, and that's all like the Grateful Dead folks behind that are doing that festival.
I wanted to mention real quick, as soon as I mentioned Royal Blue and Tom's Market. So a lot of the companies, the new companies that I cover for the paper, they reach out to me or I find out about their product because, and that's all they're in. They're not in HEBs, they're not in Whole Foods, they are relatively small scale producers who might be even renting space out of a commercial kitchen, but they've got the packaging and they've got at least a square foot of retail space. As long as my readers can buy your product, if you can buy it online, that's kind of a gray area. But I prefer, if there's a retail outlet, I'll write about you. You don't have to wait till you get to a big point. And then a lot of times people don't circle back a year or two later and say, oh, and we've added this whole other line or this, brand extension in some way. So once you get pressed, once you have a friendly relationship with media, keep in touch with them. You don't have to let them know every time you come up with a new flavor, but definitely if you come up with a new product, let them know, because that will probably could trigger new coverage, and that's what you're looking for. A lot of times brands don't understand, once I write about you, I've kind of played that card, so you need to, if I respond to you, or if I tag you on, if I see your product at a store and I Instagram you and I tag you, and you get the sense that I'm engaged, if I've nibbled, get on that, because that's your chance. Like I wrote about this stroop waffle, which is like the Danish little Dutch. Oh,
Dutch cookie.
Dutch cookie. It's not a cookie waffle. But they're here. They're local. I was in Tom's and I saw it and I turned over the packaging. It said made in Austin, Texas. I put it in my bag. I said I'm going to do this for a taste test. And they've got to be a very small company at this point, but I'm happy to give them that signal boost.
You did a great job with coconut.
Oh, coconut, that was a really fun one. That I think I found that on Instagram. So here are a couple of other product discovery things. Austin 360 Cooks and Austin 360 Eats are two hashtag campaigns that I run. Eats is for restaurant pictures and Cooks is for home cooking, and a lot of brands will come in and start tagging their products in one or the other. So if you're an at-home product, they might use Cooks. And that's how I found out about Coconut, is that she put Austin 360 Cooks on an Instagram post. So when I put this gallery together, I'm like, Coconut, what is this? And so then I go and find it, and then I reached out to her. I mean, it's like what every CPG person is dreaming for.
Which is just
I
hilarious, because I already
told her to reach
I
out.
was about to send you a mail.
That's so funny. Well, so I just said, hey, I'll try to get to the market to pick up your product, but if you can drop some off in the next week or two, I'll totally write about it, or I'll try it for my live stream. I try not to promise coverage, but this is all to say, you don't have to have a PR company to have good relationships with media, or just get your message out there. I mean, you'll get to a point where you will need PR, and I do think that PR professionals have a skill set that I don't even understand how it fully works, even though I'm on the receiving end of it all the time. But you can develop those relationships with media on your own, and you can pitch media. And especially if you just make your bucket list of 3 or 5 publications that you would like to get into, or whose writers you want to get to know, spend some time reaching out to them, get those press clips. I don't necessarily care, like if you do get picked up and you get covered in the Chronicle, I don't necessarily need to know that. It's like, oh hey, we just got this big feature in your competitor's paper. That's gonna make me want to write about you. You don't have to say that. Yeah. Although the Chronicle and we have a great relationship. So that's kind of my main piece of advice on doing your own PR, but we can go into that deeper if you want.
She said her.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Oh,
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask if, kind of as a new CPG startup here in Austin, what are some of the organizations or clubs that you suggest getting involved with in this community?
ATX Makers? That's the obvious one, right?
Yeah.
Is that what everybody's thinking about? Okay, so ATX Makers, Martha and Linda started this, or running this, and it's an informal group, kind of like the Food Blogger Alliance, but for CPG. And what April was saying about the tight-knit community of CPG, the bloggers are the same way. You burn one of them, you'll burn them all. Not that you need to know that necessarily, or I don't anticipate you're going to burn anybody's bridges, but I think that organization is so awesome, and I want to see it succeed. And I think, ATX Makers, you didn't? Oh, well, there you go.
That's a big dog.
You're a big dog. But ATX Makers, these big dogs and small dogs all together. So that's the main one, I would think. There's La Danse Escoffier, which is a all-female food professionals organization. You might consider that one. Any others?
AFBA.
AFBA, but she's a brand. She can be in that.
But I think
She can reach out to it.
Getting to know them though, yeah.
Well, there's a list, a membership list. I always send them to PR people and brands whenever they want me to try their product. I send them the list of the membership and say, hey, here's 150 other bloggers in the city that you might want to reach out to.
I used it for National
too.
Coffee Day to find my peeps that I would have wanted to write anyway, so I could be really specific.
AustinFoodBloggers.org/members, probably.
Yeah.
That'll show you all the members of the Food Blogger Alliance. And we don't put their email address on there. We do make you do a little bit of the legwork, but that's a quick way to find all the bloggers. Okay.
So for traditional PR and like reaching out to someone like yourself, before you actually launch your product, whatever it is, how long of a lead time would you say on average should be
Before the
used
product
for-
is ready to buy, or before you're hoping to get the coverage?
Before it is actually released and is ready
Oh,
on shelves and
I like to find out about it when it's already on shelves. I
Whenever it's
don't
already
need
on
a
shelves.
huge amount of
Okay.
lead time. And actually, I kind of get frustrated when I get promises from people about, well, it's gonna be. It's like my inbox is so full, my head is so full. Hit me when you're really ready. And then that coverage could be the following week.
Yeah.
I mean, my deadline is pretty much week
So
to
I've
week.
always thought in my head, I have like a few people kind of in mind for PR type things like that, but it's always, I'm very organized, so I want to be able to have that, that flow happen, whenever I want it to happen. So, I don't want to come at it too last minute and then get 10 no's or something, and then now I'm left with, nothing.
Well, and
So it's
also
kind
you're
of
not asking, I mean, in my situation, you would not be asking for coverage at that point. You would be like,
Yeah.
hey, just reaching out, I just started this company, want to give you a heads up, in about 6 months, we're gonna roll this out. You don't have to do anything, I will reach out to you at that point. I'm just putting this on the radar, and it's nice to meet you. Yeah.
Right, an introduction too, start that relationship.
Relationship building.
Sometimes, I mean, if you give it information too early, they're just gonna forget. I get press releases all the time where somebody's launching something in 6 months or a year. Like, well, do you want me to remember it?
Yeah.
And get back to you? Like, you need to get back to me again anyway, so.
Yeah,
And I
that
think-
follow-up is huge.
I think to remember too, there are different lead times, like we're pitching for January issues right now. So just remember that if you are pitching long lead, and if you feel that you're comfortable enough pitching a long lead magazine, Addie's turnaround time is very different from an online turnaround, which is very different from magazines. If you're looking at a real simple, or even if it's Esquire, whoever it is, you need to go back probably 3, sometimes to 6 months, really. So they're closing the books on January right now, so we're working with the editors to get that coverage for January and then February as well. So that's something to keep in mind if you're looking at who you're gonna pitch and what you're pitching for, just keep those lead times in mind.
Yeah.
We haven't mentioned TV. We don't have any TV reps up here, but they are looking for, they need warm bodies who can be on camera. So keep that in mind.
With no like notice.
With no notice. I mean, they often, but I mean, imagine getting like a five to 10
4
minute,
o'clock in the morning.
you know, essentially free, it's morning shows specifically.
Yep.
So you would reach out to the producers of those shows. I think you would develop relationships with them just like you would any other media, but like I said, they need something that's visual, if you can do a product demo, if you can show, if you're a honey company, you can show some bees, like, but I know I've heard about pay to play in some markets for that as well. So, you know, be aware that some stations might come at you and say, well, we're gonna need a fee from you to do that, but a lot of them, like I said, they just need content.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just have a quick question. We haven't talked about it, and this is strict technical marketing on channel and channel development. So you guys, we haven't mentioned sort of putting product or CPG product or whatever product into other channels, sort of like subscriptions, other services. Are you guys seeing that a lot more, or have you seen
They
folks
come out
yet
of
be
the woodwork.
successful to be in any kind of, it could be CSA
Yeah.
subscription or a strict box subscription?
We've done it a few times. We've done a vegan cuts with our black and bold. And then we're in I should be able to remember what it's called, but it's a booze box.
Is it booze box?
And what they do is amazing.
Yeah.
We were in one of theirs, and they actually keep putting us in recipes just because we have a really great relationship. So even though we haven't been but one of their events, and then we just had somebody else. We keep the whole world, like, once you do a couple, everybody who has one of those will pitch you. And I keep sending them off to my boss, like, oh, what do you think of that? She's like, pass. I just sent her one yesterday, actually, and so it just kind of depends. But I think it can be good, but it's really pricey for a brand. Like the vegan cuts, I needed enough for 4,000 boxes. It had to get from our warehouse in Missouri to their warehouse in Washington State, where they're actually in Canada. And then you get to pay for all that trucking.
Yeah.
They're not paying for that.
The
So that
box
can be a
thing-
pain in the ass.
They
for a
didn't,
brand.
My
they didn't
gut
pay
tells me-
wholesale prices at all? You didn't
No,
know?
they don't pay for anything.
Really?
They're like, you get to be in our box.
Crazy.
My gut
Yeah, you
tells
can see
me,
in our box.
my gut
You're
tells me
welcome.
that
You're,
your boxes,
essentially, you're just giving
this is
samples.
a
Bigger
It's 4,000
box.
samples.
We're not gonna be talking about the gift subscription boxes.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like we're kind of, that trend is about ready. Now, Blue Apron and that style is different.
That's different.
Animal,
I
but
mean straight.
The subscription boxes, I
subscription.
think, are too expensive and not enough value for consumers, in my
Yeah, and I
eyes.
don't know I think it's great because at least if they've got a really great reach, like Vegan Cuts has a really great reach. They did a lot for us social media wise, they keep still doing it, but then they wrote me back and were like, oh, we're gonna have a special coffee box, you wanna do that? And I'm like, oh, is that why you're sweethearting me?
Yeah.
You know, so then you have to read between the lines, cause then that goes back to being genuine, right? Like, I thought we had a cool relationship, bro, and now you're just like, I need 4,000 more cans, like that costs a lot of money. So it
You
just kinda
also-
depends what it is and how much.
And you don't get feedback that way either.
That's
I mean,
Some of them do great. They
if
still give
somebody-
you a really terrific survey if it's a really badass company. Other ones it is
But I
pretty
mean,
half-assed.
when the person opens the box in the house and opens the thing, you're not, as opposed to sampling in person and you see the reaction.
Right.
And you get the feedback. Maybe you need that feedback initially when you're starting. Maybe something tastes bad and you're numb to it. You know, you need somebody to continually tell you that it's bitter before you change the recipe.
Right.
If you're sending that out to 4,000 houses, you're potentially opening up to bad word of mouth or just nothing.
Or like, and only 5 of them are gonna be some special bloggers that are gonna open it on video and they have a deal with that
Right.
box.
Yeah.
Or Instagram.
Right.
Alright, we'll go back to you.
Is the return on investment like quantifiable for giving out that many samples? Like, can you see your investment coming back to you, or is it just kind of like a blind leap of faith, like, hey, here's a bunch of coffee, let me know, you know?
I think
or
that there's
do they
a-
share those like
there-
contacts with you, like their customers, they share that
No.
post with you?
I mean, what they do is they'll still, like, Vegan Cuts does a really great survey, so I got all the feedback and more from, like, not all 4,000, but a whole lot of them, which was super great. I mean, you need that, I mean, as a brand, to your point, just them, like, oh, suck it up, is it still too bitter, is it this, is the
Right.
stevia off, I mean, whatever, like,
Right.
that's really great feedback that you wouldn't normally get from somebody. But a literal ROI, no, I think you're hoping, and I think there'd be a way, like, if they put a special coupon that would work at, like, Target or Whole Foods, like we did something with Ibotta, which went through Target or Kroger, we could see that return immediately. That's totally different, so it kinda depends on how you set it up.
And that can save you a lot of money too, if you do have products in the stores to send coupons instead of product. I get product, I
And I do that
coupons
a lot.
sometimes, yeah. Did you have a question over here? No? Okay, we'll go back.
Regarding Ibotta, how is that working for you guys?
I think that we have a really terrific relationship with them, and it's pretty cool. We've only done something, I think, twice with them, and it was a big deal because we didn't want to lose our shelf space to paying to actually be in a grocery store, because you pay to do all the planogramming in the store, which is how it's all set up when you come in on a shelf. You have to pay for all of that,
Yeah.
and some is more than others depending on who you're dealing with. Kroger and Safeway are not cheap. Target is not cheap. We didn't want to lose that shelf space, so we went with Ibotta for both a Kroger run and a Target run, and it was super great. And then on the side, because they're such a cool company to work for, they do stuff for us all the time, just cause. And they'll retweet it or share it, or they'll steal something cool of ours off of Instagram and go put it out there and just share it. And I think that's badass. I mean, that's when you actually have a really great relationship and not just a money relationship.
We're
with a brand.
trialing with them right now, but since we're we're obviously not in as many stores as High Brew, so but the relationship's been great. It's just that it seems like it's something that you'll see more return of if you're more established in bigger chains. Because,
Higher volume
our
and-
volume is
and-
just really
And
really
larger
slow.
chains for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think we would have done something like that for even a Sprouts. But
Yeah.
for Kroger or Target, like that was really worth it to keep that ability to have our products in those stores, especially so quickly. I mean, we're still not 4 years old yet, so.
We've got 5 minutes left. Now, it's now or never. I mean, until later when you reply one of us and ask a question. Come on.
Where are you with like hashtags as far as like, cause some people will be like 2 is enough, or some people are like 5 is the max, but then you'll see great companies that have loads of followers and they're doing like 10. You know, so it's like, where do you stand where it just becomes like ridiculous?
Damn good question.
Do you put it in the comment or the?
Yeah, and like, do you put it in a
caption?
comment, or are you tagging them? I mean, like half the time I'm like, everyone does something different, and you just, you don't
do
wanna look
both,
desperate.
But I'm not a ... and then lay out 27 hashtags,
Yeah.
which
You
a
see
lot
that
of
too.
people do, and it
Yeah.
seems to work, I guess, if you're trying to fit a whole lot of different niches.
Yeah.
I don't know, that one still boggles my mind too, as a
Okay.
brand, if that makes you feel
I would
any
say-
better.
Yeah, no, those
Some might not have any. I mean, there are artsy posts where I don't put any hashtags on. But then there are other hashtags, where I have a couple of set ones that I do, Austin 360 Cooks or Relish Austin, but then I'll just make them up and have
Which I think
sugar,
is funny.
I think some are funny.
I think
You
that's
like
almost
that.
where the money comes from. I mean, quite literally, that's how you grow your followers on Instagram is hashtag the shit out of your posts. But too much hashtags looks like you're trying too hard, and I certainly negatively blink too many hashtags. So
Yeah.
you're right to keep that in mind.
I agree.
Find the little happy medium. Find the hashtags that work. If you're or what's your product or company?
It's in the works.
Okay.
It's like, yeah.
Well, but go like if it's a kombucha company,
Yeah.
go troll that hashtag kombucha.
Okay.
Engage with those followers. Anytime I do hashtag kombucha, because I'm a kombucha nerd, I get both follows and engagement from people who are in the kombucha community.
Okay.
And so if I were a kombucha community, or I would definitely be on that hashtag, looking around, finding other people who are passionate about it.
And then
So-
specific stuff to your brand. Like
Yeah.
for us, we have for those who do, and then
That's right.
and then better not bitter. Is that me blowing up?
That is.
Uh,
that hashtag's actually become a big part of your strategy.
Correct.
For those who do.
And I pick depending on what if it's going to be on Instagram, depending on what the photo is or what it is, will be if it's kind of like a good day post, it's definitely going to get a better not bitter.
Okay.
Because I think
Wow,
that's
yeah.
just cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if somebody's actually doing something, whether it's like you're doing something in the community and nonprofit, or you're physically doing something, they're gonna get it for those who do. you win a contest, I'm always gonna do winner chicken dinner, because that shit's funny.
Ah.
So it's just good to like throw some funny ones in there and still have cold brew.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm not always gonna do that. Sometimes it'll be coffee, sometimes it'll be something ridiculous with coffee, you know, like today was coffee talk. Because it was just a ridiculous post I put on Instagram.
It's such an easy way to find your audience. I mean, if you're doing coffee and people are hashtagging coffee and you're looking for coffee lovers, you type in that word and there they are.
Yeah.
So it's never been easier and it's free.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't use a lot is my biggest thing. It's a pet
Because it's out of
peeve.
control.
It's just out of control. It's bad.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Yeah.
Too much to read.
Is there one question, last question back there?
Bueller.
Keep like
Anyone?
Matt and
Anyone?
see
Anyone?
hands that are going down.
Raised, lower.
Yes.
Who did the food today?
Oh, that's from Veracruz Tacos.
Where are they?
There's
Joe.
3 locations, the process is on East and Houses.
Really good.
There you go. Awesome.
And they do really great
What PR
aqua
companies
frescos.
do you like to use?
What?
What PR company you said that you said?
So our firm is Connect with a K. And that's they're actually out of Beverly Hills. They now have an Austin office. We've always had an Austin person. And they do a lot with, we're kind of like, that's all the same Twisted family. So they help Rhythm, Benito's, they've done a whole lot of other people's stuff in all the natural food space. But there's a lot of great PR companies here in town.
Yeah, I mean, I work with small companies, big companies. I have, you know, some really good relationships with small companies, and, you know, Connect has done a good job of helping build. Usually with national PR companies, it's really hard to develop that kind of one-on-one connection with regional writers, but.
If you want to shop around, reach out to a bunch of different PR companies that you're looking at and ask to be on their mailing list. And then start receiving releases and see how you like their work.
That's smart. That's really
Yeah, and you
smart.
can see what it is they really do.
And if you
that
follow
works for you.
them on Instagram and Twitter, you'll see how they talk about their clients. Then you can go follow those client pages and see, and you can see, yeah, you'll get a sense of like, oh, this, you know, you can kind of see through the smoke, not smoke and mirrors, but see
Smoke
behind
and
the
mirrors.
curtain a little bit and say, oh, I see, you know, I see some, you know, you can start to learn more about how the sausage is made.
Yeah, I think see if they're in line with your brand too and your core values. You know, because like sometimes PR firms, like we have clients that come in and they're just not a culture fit, and like that's totally fine. But just make sure that they're in line with your values, because then you'll have a much better working relationship right from the start.
They'll understand what your needs are and know how to pitch what you're really wanting them to pitch, as opposed to like it being this really difficult relationship.
And
It shouldn't be difficult.
Do you guys
No.
think, this is maybe my last question, do you think that you should hand over all the social media to the PR companies, or do you think that there's some value in keeping it yourself?
No.
Well, but it sounds like
And not
you
just
guys,
'cause I wanna be out of a
but
job,
you
but-
do social media for some of your clients.
Right, we do, and so yeah, my team's right there. But yeah, we got a kick-ass team that does really great stuff. That's what we have the clients asking us to help with that. But if you've got someone like, I mean, April on there, I would be like, oh hell no, she's gonna do it.
I know,
Well, just how my boss feels, and I now kind of want help, and she's like, no.
I mean, I would advocate keeping your social media in-house while working closely with your PR company. However, if you don't have anybody in-house and you have a really badass PR company that does great social, but just know that at some point, if these two businesses separate, there goes your social media. So
Or they can help you with campaigns. Like I do a lot of work with Culture Collide, and that was all because I really wanted on the guest list to Ghostland last year during South by. Totally worked. Now we have a really great relationship. Like I do a lot of their events. They do a lot of stuff for us. They've done a lot of like stuff that we didn't pay for. And they're helping us. They'll do a lot of our campaigns. My contact there actually has a calendar and has all this stuff plugged in, and I know, like, she knows there was an embargo during ACL. Don't post anything for us, and I know the rest of what she's doing. It all looks like it's me. In fact, they just did something where they had me and our CEO talking about cool shit to do in Austin. Well, that's a really meta post to see that it's about you, but you didn't write it, but it's you that would normally be writing that sort of thing.
And it has nothing to do with coffee, which is crazy, right? That's where you get into think outside of what you're actually selling, that you're selling something more than
No lifestyle.
Yeah.
And then you're still got like a part of you still doing what you need to do, but you've also got this really great help. That I think that there's nothing wrong with, whether that's your PR firm or an ad agency or whoever you're using, as long as they get your brand and you, that's the important part.
All right, guys, I think we gotta wrap it up, but thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.
Wait, what?